After watching this movie, I almost wanted to go out and buy a dress. Almost. Cinderella is directed by Kenneth Branagh, written by Chris Weitz. It's based on a couple of things. For one, the old movie from 1950 by Disney, directed by Clyde Hieronymi, Hamilton Musquet, and Wilfred Jackson, as well as the original, well, French version of the story, Cendrillon by Charles Perrault. And this movie stars Lily James, Richard Madden, Kate Blanchett, and Helena Bonham Carter. And if you don't know the story of Cinderella, it's about this really nice girl who can apparently talk to animals and mice named Ella, who is left orphaned and left with a wicked stepmother and two wicked stepsisters. And one day, the prince of the kingdom decides to hold a ball, and everyone's invited. And Cinderella wants to go, but then her family doesn't let her. But luckily, her fairy godmother gives her a really nice dress, some glass slippers, and she goes to the ball. And the prince falls in love with her and tries to find out who she is. Now, Disney's been giving us a lot of like really revisionist takes on fairy tales and whatnot, from Frozen to Maleficent to Into the Woods, but thankfully Cinderella is very, very traditional. It's pretty much the old cartoon in live action form. And while the traditional form of this movie kind of takes a little things away from it, I did think that the costumes were incredible, and the writing I thought was actually very surprisingly sharp. Now the visuals in Cinderella are all actually very quite good, both the CGI and the live action like production design. The CGI, like it's obviously not like the best. Like the mice are obviously kind of there, but they're not that distracting. But the production design really impressed me because it's just jaw dropping. Like it's so intricate and it's so lavish, and they really used and built like real palaces and, well, not palaces, but like real ballrooms and whatnot, and just so impressive. And the thing for me that really kind of stole the show was the costumes. And I've never spazzed about costumes in a movie like this before, but they did pretty much, hold my attention all throughout because they are so well designed and there's so much attention given to them. But for me, they, serve a higher purpose. They do, I think, actually add the character. Like they have a lot of fun in transforming certain animals into human beings, and their costumes look like the animals and whatnot. But even everything from Lady Tremaine's dresses to Cinderella's dresses are all extremely detailed, and I love them. And the musical score from Patrick Doyle, it's very orchestral, and I think it's very suitably sweeping and elegant for this kind of story. And I think it actually played a big part in helping the movie seem more like an old-fashioned period film than a Disney adaptation. And the editor here, Martin Walsh, thankfully keeps the pacing very steady and very thoughtful, to give really more time to the characters and help us, get invested in the relationships. I like that this movie wasn't like super fast-paced like a kids movie, but it really did take its time. And speaking of the characters, also the characters are still pretty much archetypes in this movie, but for me they have just enough personality and motivation to really feel real. Like I like what they did, like how they modified the characters of Cinderella and the prince, and the stepmother, to really kind of let us understand where they're coming from more. I thought all the dialogue was surprisingly very sharp and fun to listen to. I thought the themes they had of courage and kindness were very simple, but the way they tackled them, I really think they developed them well in ways that, are not obvious for kids' movies. And in terms of acting, Lily James, who plays Cinderella, is great. She's very gentle and she's so charming that you just can't help but fall in love with her. But she doesn't come off as a pushover like a lot of these old Disney princesses used to come off as. She does embody those traits of being kind and courageous, but she does it in a way that's not like stereotypical. Richard Madden, who I know plays Robb Stark, but I don't watch Game of Thrones, he's really great in this movie. I think he manages to sidestep all the cliches we associate with fairy tale princess, and he's extremely likable as well. And the chemistry they have together is fantastic. You don't doubt for a second that it's possible this guy would have fallen in love with her. Like they really make it believable. Kate Blanchett is always great in any role she's in. She really kind of relishes playing these kind of villainous roles, and she manages to let us kind of have sympathy for her character as well. And Kenneth Branagh, who directed this movie, like his forte really is like Shakespearean stuff. He directed that 4 hour long Hamlet thing, which is really great, and he directed Thor. Um, and he really makes this movie feel again more like a period film, and he makes these elements feel very, very engaging. It's like, the drama is never so melodramatic, but it's given just the right amount of gravity for us to really care about it in a very serious way. And you can really see like the height of his powers during the dance sequence during the ball when Cinderella and the prince are dancing. It goes on for like a couple minutes, and it's so mesmerizing to watch. Just the way it's staged is fantastic. I do have a couple of issues with the movie, like I said, because stemming from it, how it's like really, really traditional. For one, when the fairy godmother scene happens, it just really kind of stuck out kind of awkwardly because they did some sort of slapstick humor in it, but the way they set it up was just so out of the blue and really kind of overly magical, at least in my opinion, because I was used to the mice being like not so magical, but so when it happened, it just felt a bit out of place in the movie, and then you never see the fairy godmother again. And then another issue I had was that I thought the villains could have used just a bit more depth. Like, I like what they did with Kate Blanchett's character, but there's this character that Stellan Skarsgård plays, who's the Duke, and I really think they should have fleshed them out a lot more. But in the end, I thought Cinderella was a really good movie, surprisingly. If 50 Shades of Grey was my first, like, 2015 release that I watched in theaters, Cinderella was the first really good 2015 release I watched, thankfully. It's really, like, fun for all ages. And it's the second also in a line of what looks like will be a long string of like live action Disney adaptations. The idea itself, I'm not completely sold on, but if they're all as good as Cinderella, then keep them coming. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Cinderella. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agreed or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.